You can use most of Excel's built-in worksheet functions in VBA, but you really need to be familiar with the function when you use them in VBA. What I mean by that is when you're in a worksheet and you use, for example, sum if, you will see a little pop-up asking for the range and criteria. But here in VBA, when you use sum if, you will see a pop-up, but it will read arg1, arg2, arg3, and so on. So you need to know exactly what those arguments are. So let me show you a couple of quick examples of how to use a common worksheet function, like sum. And in this first example, I'm just going to create a message box that adds up two numbers, 200 and 200. So the first thing that I'm doing here is I'm using worksheet function. You'll notice that it's all one word. And actually, let me go ahead and backspace this out to show you that after you type in worksheet function, when you press the period operator, you get a list of all the available worksheet functions you can use here in VBA. And they're all, of course, in alphabetical order. So I want to use sum, so I'll go ahead and click on that, and then use my space bar. Now, right now VBA thinks that I'm trying to do something more for the message box, but I actually need to put in my arguments for the sum function. So I'll just start with an open parentheses. And there you can see I've got argument 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, all the way up to argument 30. Well, here again, I'm just going to add up two numbers. So again, I'll put in 200 for the first argument, and then 200 again for the second argument. Close my parentheses. Now I'm back to the message box. This is actually all I want to do here. So I'll test this out by hitting function 5. And you can see there's the message box showing 400. All right, let me go ahead and close that. And now I'm back in my VBE. So that's one way you can use the popular function of sum, just putting in the numbers, just like you would do inside of an Excel workbook. Now, something else that you would do inside of an Excel workbook is maybe sum up a range. So I'm going to show you how to do that next. I'll go ahead and get rid of what I have here and switch back over to Excel. So what I'll do in this part of the example is I want to have a sum total there at the bottom of my table. So I'm going to use worksheet function and then sum again to sum up the range here of B2 through B6. So let me head on back to Visual Basic. And I want my answer to be inside of B7. So I'll go ahead and type in the range of B7 dot value is going to be assigned worksheet function dot sum one more time, and this time I'm going to sum up the range. So I put range in there first, and then of course range also has its own arguments. So the range here will be B2 through B6. All right, now go ahead and close out my range. Now I need to use the parentheses to close out my sum. All right, so let me go ahead and test this. I'll go ahead and run it by hitting function 5. And head on back to Excel, and there's my total. All right, so switching back to VBA here, again, worksheet function, there are a lot of functions that you can use here, ones that you use probably daily here inside of Excel. But the key thing to know here in VBA is when you're using worksheet function, you don't get the same help from the drop-down like you would in a regular Excel workbook. Instead of seeing range and criteria here, I'm seeing arg1, and I have my as range there, and then I have my as double or whatever it is. So just make sure you know exactly how to use the function before you try to use it here in VBA.